Welcome to NATAT, and today we continue the migration discussion with Kelly, and Kelly is a registered migration agent, and Kelly, we welcome you again into our program, and today we're going to focus into skill migration. We did discuss about family the previous week, and but before we go to skill migration, just to clarify an issue. Irrespective to what visa I have, how the law protects me here in case of family violence, for example. You know, I invited a partner to come with me, and we got married, and all of a sudden becomes issues between us and becomes a family violence. The person who is not permanent resident, how in front of the law this person is covered?
Okay, they are protected.
Okay.
Okay, family violence is against the law in Australia.
Okay.
So somebody, even before they obtain their temporary residency, if they're facing family violence from the Australian citizen or Australian permanent resident, they can request protection.
Okay.
Even if they're still on their bridging visa.
Okay.
Waiting for the temporary.
Okay.
People need to be aware this situation does not lead immigration to say to you, go back to your country.
Okay.
Okay? That's very important for
because
people
you're
to
a victim
understand.
from
you are
the
a victim.
Yes.
So, yes, these investigations do happen. You can get your protection just like any other person would that's facing family violence in Australia.
Okay.
So you can seek protection, you can seek assistance, and these organisations that provide that protection to Australian citizens as well do get in touch with migration agents, and of course, in cases like that, we do our work pro bono.
Oh,
okay. So I mean that's a basic rule.
That's right.
Because in a case like that, you don't look at professional fees. It's
if I reverse that one and I say, okay, I'm not the Australian citizen. I was invited and I got married here, and I haven't got my permanent residency yet. I'm on the bridging visa, whatever, but I caused the violence. I'm the one who is not the victim.
Just like the Australian citizen in the previous example you used would have to face the consequences, the legal consequences of being violent, so will you.
All right.
Okay, so it works both ways.
Does immigration again?
Approval of visas are character tested.
Oh, okay. All right.
So you're immediately creating for yourself a police check that's not going to be clean.
Okay.
Within Australia itself. So.
All right. Okay. All right. Just to
I won't
clarify
say that it's going to be bad, but I'm just leaving that open now.
Okay, that's open for now. No, it's good to see all the aspects of immigration in the sense of because we have real people with real cases, and every case is different, I suppose. But as long as legally,
what migrants need to understand, especially temporary migration, whether it's as a student, whether it's as a temporary working visa, like the 457, which people all have heard.
We're going to go into that shortly.
We will. Your rights are protected.
Okay.
Okay?
Right.
Working rights and consumer affair rights, everything, whether it's your rent or whether it's the way that you've been treated by service, whether it's the way you've been treated by your employer. Fair Work does go and see a lot of migrants that are having problems with their employers.
There's no prejudice in front of the Australia law. That's it.
There isn't.
Okay.
It's people who are on the visas that are usually scared to speak out.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They feel more vulnerable anyway in that
It's
case.
understandable. In some cases, it could mean I'm actually dobbing myself in.
Yeah, yes,
because
that's right.
I've been doing what the employer says, but that was against my visa. So it's sometimes very difficult for them, and they're the very sad situations that actually exist out there.
And they have to really build the case quite strongly, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't just say...
People have reached the point where they've come out and they've said, well, I don't care what happens with my visa, I'm not going to allow this to be happening.
That's right, which is fair enough. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the skill migration. That's very easy. That famous 457 visa, currently speaking, in 2015. So 457 visa. If I'm interested in skill migration and I am from overseas, from even you say any country in Europe or in Asia or something, what would be the very first thing to look at? How I'm going to go about it to find out how to come to Australia? I don't have family here, nothing at all.
Okay.
And I'm looking for skills. How would I start?
It all depends what your qualifications are and which way you should direct yourself. I will direct people as a first step, okay, to go into the immigration website.
Okay.
I know it might sound strange to you. I'm a migration agent, so why am I sending people there that can get free information? But that's a first step. You can get quite a lot of information out of there.
When you say qualification, let's bring an aspect here, because some people, they do have qualification, but the country they come from, it's very difficult to obtain sometime the experience based on that qualification. Should experience match the qualification, or one can wipe out the other if your experience is not relevant to your qualification?
In certain visas yes, it can.
All right.
Some people have got many years of experience and no actual certificates as such.
Yes.
Okay, if that can be proven, if that experience can be proven.
Yes.
There are certain occupations which allow that. Okay. Some say 5 years of experience, highly relevant experience, can replace the qualification. Some say 3 years. So it depends on what sort of occupation we're talking about.
Okay.
That's also quite easy. Basically, immigration follows the ANSCO descriptions of an occupation.
Okay. That means we should go specifically to those descriptions there.
That's right.
To make sure we cover immigration requirements.
That's right. That's right. And your skill assessment requirements, if you're going to go for a visa that requires skill assessment. Because not all of them do, not all passports do.
Let's go with the skill assessment in a minute. We're going to continue after the break. Thanks for staying with us. We'll continue with the skill migration visa. Welcome back, and we continue the conversation with Kelly, the skill migration. But we want to discuss specifically now, I'm a civil engineer. Can you travel with me the process of the assessment of my skill? How should I go about it, and how can I understand how to do the process?
Okay, the important factors that you need to look at, firstly, is which direction you're going to go to for a visa.
Okay.
Like a civil engineer can basically go for all the working visas because they're on the SOL list, and there's also a CSOL list.
Okay.
The SOL is in the CSOL. Okay. So the SOL list allows you the independent skill visas.
Okay.
Which means you don't need to have an employer sponsoring you.
Okay.
Okay, it's fully on your qualifications, your experience. As a point system, which counts toward for those points. They take into consideration your age, your English abilities, your certificates, degrees, masters, whatever you have, the experience, the number of years of experience, both overseas and within Australia. If you had done any studies in Australia, they also count towards that. So there's a build-up of points. Okay.
That means if I fill my points, automatically they say okay.
No, they don't automatically.
Oh, all right.
Okay. You have to collect
I thought it was easier than that.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Okay. So what you need to do for that visa, as well as for a sponsored visa, which means you have an employer. There can be a permanent resident one. It can be a temporary one.
All right.
Okay. With the temporary ones, it's certain passport holders. So it's where your passport's from, and for certain occupations that require skill assessment. With the permanent ones, they all require skill assessment.
All right.
Okay. So
because the permanent one is based on my skills and my build-up, my experience.
Exactly.
While
you're
the
getting a permanent one. Temporary one means you're here for 2 years, 4 years, and then you go home.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes. A specific signature.
Exactly.
Which is pretty much the request from the employer, isn't it? Because you're sponsored.
Yes. Well, they want somebody who's coming in.
Yes.
That's going to be at the level or high level of local labour. They don't want local labour to lose their jobs.
Yes.
Okay. So there's that's why there's always those arguments. Let's take this out, put this in, and so forth.
Okay.
But what we have to take into consideration is you need a skill assessment if you're going to go for a permanent. Okay. You need minimum of 6 or equivalent in the Cambridge and TOEFL tests.
Okay.
Right. For the permanent.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I said. The 6s were the IELTS. They're usually the numbers we talk about.
Right, that's right.
With a temporary, you need 5s.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's IELTS test and all. That's the English language test.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So if we're going to go for a permanent, you definitely need a skills assessment.
Okay.
What is a skills assessment? There are certain organisations who are listed, and people can find them in the immigration site, okay, which state the occupation, the ANSCO code, and the assessing authority.
Okay.
Right? So we're talking about civil engineer. Civil engineers in Australia need to be licensed and registered with Engineers Australia.
All right.
So the assessing authority in this case is Engineers Australia, because they are going to register you.
That means I have to apply to Engineers Australia to prove my case.
Yeah. People need to be careful.
Okay.
All right. There's skill migration assessment, and there's also the assessment that these organisations have to register you.
Okay.
Now, nothing is stopping. Let's say, for example, you are a civil engineer, fully qualified, you have X amount of years experience, you've got projects, because Engineers Australia really wants a big file with your projects and so forth.
Yes.
So you can submit all that to register with Engineers Australia.
Yes.
Because you have decided to also do some course in an Australian university, a postgraduate course, which is going to give you specialisation in something. So you may come over here as a starting point to do those extra specialisations.
Okay.
And while you're here, you would like to also be able to work as a civil engineer. So you need to get the licensing from Engineers Australia.
That's right. Yes.
All right? That's got nothing to do with your visa for later on.
That's right. Okay.
All right?
Yes.
Now, because obviously with civil engineers, it's a university study and so forth, you usually would go for a 573 or maybe even a 574 if it's a PhD level. Okay. And therefore your working rights and hours you can work are a lot different to the other
Now,
student
wouldn't
visas.
I go then to get the civil authority, civil engineer authority to give me the registration and get some sort of visa that will treat my extra education as an Australian resident rather than as an overseas student, because that will be, it's a cost involved there, isn't it?
Well, no, when you get your assessment from Engineers Australia, you don't get a visa.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Engineers Australia then has to do, you've got to do a migration skill assessment.
All right. Okay.
That goes to immigration.
Okay.
So there's a difference between registering and being allowed to operate in Australia than to actually obtaining your permanent residency.
From immigration.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's two different things.
In case I have...
Nurses face the same thing.
Okay.
Okay. Because immigration doesn't want to give you a visa if you can't be registered. If Engineers Australia doesn't accept your qualifications and experience for you to be licensed in Australia, immigration will not give you a visa.
That means the registration helps my visa, but it's not guarantee for that.
No, exactly.
Okay. Now, or I'm a nurse, for example, or engineer or something, and then I get the registration from the local authority, but when it comes to immigration, what is the immigration checks as an extra?
Immigration will check your age. That's where the point systems come in.
Okay,
we're talking about the independent visas. They will check your age, your English competency, because that doesn't always happen with the authority that's registering you. That's assessing you, because registering, they do expect. Accountants are supposed to have 7 academic.
Oh, gee.
So are civil engineers.
And each one of them has got their own classification.
Yeah, nurses are, I think they've got a 6 or a 7 in academic, but they can do the O8 as well. Immigration says the following.
Yes.
I want a minimum of 6 for a permanent visa.
Okay.
All right?
And then classifies
If the
as-
authority that's
yeah.
going to license you says,
Yes.
I want a 7,
Yes.
you have to get a 7, otherwise I won't give you a visa.
We're going to come back in this point. Thanks for staying with us. We're going to continue in skill migrations. Complicated topic, but it's very, very useful for all of us. See you shortly. Welcome back with the discussion we have with Kelly in relation to migration issues, specifically skill migration. Now, I'm a mechanic and I want to come to Australia, or yet not necessarily high professional qualifications from overseas, but experienced mechanic, at least 5 years overseas. And how can I
You're
go
talking
about
about motor mechanic?
motor mechanic?
Okay.
Yes. And I'm quite practical in my terms. And now, with that sort of mentality, what do you want from me to fill up the application?
Okay. Well, before I fill out the application, I always ask for your CV, so I'll have a lot of information on you. Okay. So that will give me the best guideline.
Okay.
But motor mechanics, for example, are in the CSOL. Okay, they're also in the SOL, which means you can go for different types of visas. All right, so let's go to the sponsorship visa, the temporary one, where their skill assessment is not required, as I said previously, but it is for certain passport holders and certain occupations.
Okay.
Motor mechanic happens to be one of them.
All right.
Okay. For example, you've got, if somebody's a holder of an Indian passport or a Thailand passport, and I can't remember the rest of them at this point, that are required to go through skills assessment.
All right.
Okay?
Okay.
Skills assessment looks at your experience and qualifications, if there are any.
Okay.
Because there is an allowance under RANSCO for a motor mechanic to either have certificate 4 as a motor mechanic, or minimum of 3 years experience, proven experience. Okay, so when you go to skill assessment though, they become a bit harsher.
All right.
Okay. So we've got mainly we're saying if we're going through a passport, let's say European passport, there is no skill assessment involved. We're talking about a temporary sponsored visa, which means immigration checks your experience, checks your English, which needs to be a minimum of 5 across the board in IELTS and the equivalent in the other 2 tests.
When you say temporary sponsor visa, means there is a shop here that requested from me to come and can apply and sponsor me for the next 3 years, for example.
Well, it can be up to 4 years.
Okay.
The most important thing that I always request for potential visa applicants that come to see me is that I want them to understand what their sponsor is undertaking and what they're doing.
Okay.
Because the sponsor actually puts in an application as well.
All right.
They apply to be approved as a sponsor. And then they put in another application.
Who approves that?
Immigration.
Immigration, okay.
And then they have to put in another application nominating you for the specific position.
All right.
So they are going through putting forward a business plan which includes your position, why they need you, why they can't find somebody else in Australia. So there is a whole process. We actually go into all the company accounts and books.
Okay. Now, in case we take that the company is okay, is valid.
Yeah, that's
immigration says just it ticks it on. Now, if I stay here for 3 or 4 years working for this specific company, am I allowed to extend that one, or do I have the opportunity to apply for permanent?
You would have to. Okay. If you're on the 457 temporary working visa, this is the one that we were actually talking about.
Yes.
If you're 2 years continuously with an employer, the same employer that sponsored you, that same employer can sponsor you for a permanent visa.
After the 2 years?
After the 2 years.
Okay.
You don't need skills assessment at that point, because those 2 years of experience in Australia are your actual skills assessment.
All right. Yeah.
Because if you do direct entry to the permanent sponsorship, you need to go through skills assessment, no matter what passport you've got.
Yes.
All right?
Okay.
So it's got to be the same employer. The important thing is, when you're here on a 457, if you stop working with the person that sponsored you, the company that sponsored you, you have 90 days to find another one.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, your visa, they can cancel your visa.
Ah, all right.
Okay. And I must point out, immigration doesn't just come knock on your door and say, we're cancelling your visa.
Yeah.
They don't do that.
Yeah.
You'll always get notification. We intend to cancel. You have 7 days to respond. So you can put your case forward. You can try and stop the cancellation. There are regulations within the migration legislation that allow for compelling and compassionate circumstances. So, you're not going to just suddenly find yourself with a cancelled visa.
Okay.
Now, we've had people who come in and say, we check their visa because they want to apply, and we find they don't have one. And they say, they just cancel. I said, they don't just cancel it. They've sent you notice.
Okay. That means there is a certain sort of understanding from immigration point of view to the situation, the real situations that people face.
And immigration has been known to give people time when they're seeing that there's been a bad circumstance involved.
All right. So it's not everything. It's not everything black and white.
They're not the boogeyman.
Okay, good. No, it's good to know, because sometimes coming from different cultural background, everything is threatening to you, or that's how it looks like.
People need to understand one thing though: immigration officers will not give you advice.
Oh, okay. That's a good point.
Immigration officers will say, well, you just need to apply for a visa. They won't tell you what you can apply for. They're not obliged to tell you.
So in this case, this is your role. Is very, very crucial.
It's not. It's good that this exists.
Yes.
Okay. People may say, there's another enterprise happening, because we've got businesses running now with migration agents. But if you think about it, the assessor should not be giving you advice. That is how immigration is keeping itself clear and cut, by not giving its officers the right to give you. Actually, it's giving the right not to give you advice.
Yes. For the last 60 seconds.
Yes.
Very, very quickly. How do I know I have the right agent to put my application as a migrant?
Really? When you feel good and you feel confident enough to be able to open yourself, then you found the right person to deal with.
Okay. That means that person is able to journey with you.
You have to give your migration agent all the information, otherwise they'll know half of it.
Yes, they don't. To have bad surprises at the end, you don't want that. You need to have that comfort zone.
Exactly.
Kelly,
just make sure they're registered.
Yes.
Get onto Mara and check it.
Kelly, we really appreciate your time. We'll see you next week at the same time again with another interesting topic. Thank you for being with us.